Okay, hello everybody and welcome to a session of Chatting with the Canadians. My name is Alexa, I'm an intern at UNAM Canada, and this is Irene Brown. She will be our guest speaker for today. So thank you, Irene, for accepting the invitation.
No problem.
I want to mention that she's part of the theater group at UNAM Canada. So how are you today, Irene?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So, well, today we'll be discussing a very interesting topic, which is stereotypes. So, first of all, I would like to know, what is your definition of stereotypes?
Well, actually, I think I'm going to use a definition that I found in the Oxford Dictionary because I think that it's very accurate. So I'll just read it to you. So, a stereotype is a widely held but fixed, oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing.
Okay, do you agree with that definition?
I do. Of course, I could add to it or, explain things, but I think that definition is accurate and concise. Yes.
Okay, very good. So why do you think people believe in stereotypes?
I think that actually people believe in stereotypes because it's easy. It's easy to believe in a stereotype. And I think sometimes it allows people to enter into a conversation without really knowing a lot about a topic, but I think it's very easy and justified to talk about a stereotype of anybody or something. I think so.
Okay, good. What are some common stereotypes about Canadians? Can you tell us some examples?
Yes. I think that a stereotype for Canada is that there are two major linguistic groups, Anglophones and Francophones. And I think this is a well-known fact. And I think a stereotype is that the two never mix. You have your Francophones and you have your Anglophones. And there could be some truth to that, actually. But I think that is a huge stereotype. I think another stereotype for Canadians is that we're nice people. We're nice people. You mentioned earlier, Alexa, that I was in the play, and so I am thinking about some of the things that we discussed while we were presenting that play.
Yeah. So
that a lot of Canadians say A, a lot of English Canadians say A. I think that if I talk to people, a lot of times when I'm traveling and I say that I'm from Canada, people will say, oh, I know someone in Vancouver. Whereas I live in Ottawa and I'm from Montreal. It's a huge country. So maybe there's, I don't know if maybe they think that everybody knows each other, but it's a huge country, just like Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So you're saying that they are not always accurate, those stereotypes?
They're not always accurate. There could be an element of truth.
Okay.
But again, I think it's easy, and stereotypes do not always have to be negative, but I think a lot of times there is a negative connotation to a stereotype. So, what was your question again, sorry?
That these stereotypes are not always accurate. That's what you're saying, right?
That's hard to answer, actually, because a stereotype exists, but it's necessary to talk more about what a stereotype is, because I think so. It could be accurate, but not enough. I don't know if I don't know if I'm making myself. Because I remember when we were doing that exercise at the very beginning, when we had the words on the floor, and I remember one person in the group mentioned something that was very stereotypical, and the reaction of somebody else in the group was, what? That's negative. That's bad. So, but there was truth to what the other person was saying about the stereotype. But I think it's necessary. It's fundamental in order to get beyond the easy version of what is a stereotype, I think.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. About these stereotypes that you were mentioning, do any of those stereotypes apply to you personally?
Well, I would like to think I'm nice.
Okay.
Like Canadians.
Sure.
I probably do say A. In my case, even though my family's from Scotland, one stereotype that is really that does not apply to me is that I've crossed into like the French linguistic group in a way, because I'm from Montreal, and I started studying French when I was in grade 4, and like all my friends, and for some people it was just a bad thing. Like it was just a bad thing, and their families moved out of Quebec just to get away from I don't know, maybe there was a fear that they were going to not be able to prosper. I'm not sure, but in my case, I completely embraced it, and I went on to study French linguistics at Laval in Quebec City. And even when I was working, I always made a point, if I was speaking with someone who was Francophone, I spoke French. And if they spoke English to me, and see, this is interesting, a Francophone would speak English to me because I'm an Anglophone. So they were making a judgment about me. And sometimes the French, I think it's just historically and culturally what happened to French Canadians over time. But I was determined to be accepted by them, I guess. So I made a point of saying, why are you talking to me in English? I'm speaking to you in French. And that was a very, I had to be very determined to do that over the years. And so I really feel that I have crossed into that other linguistic group. And even recently, like, you know, Guy from theater, I remember when we went out last year with the group, and I said something, and he says, wow, it's not very often you hear an Anglophone use that expression. And that resonates inside me, because I'm happy about that.
Okay. And talking about Francophones and Anglophones, do you think there are stereotypes between them?
Oh, I think so. I think so very much. Yeah.
Can you give us an example?
Well, just the example that I just mentioned about Guy, that was, I think that was, he was very, like, he knows I speak French, and I've spoken French with him many times, but just when I said, and it's something that I said, les nerfs, which is kind of a very colloquial way of saying, you know, just calm down. And so I think that is an example. I have a girlfriend who I've known since the age of 4. She lived across the street from me, and she is a perfect example of someone who was raised in Montreal, like I was, and does not speak a word of any other language. And I feel sometimes there's almost a resentment on her part, whether she realizes it or not. If we're in a group and there's someone who speaks French and I'm speaking French to them, and it's almost, I don't know whether it's because she doesn't know it, or it's just, why is it necessary to speak in another language? English is enough. I don't know. I've never actually, all I know is that I've picked up on it, and she actually says, you're speaking in French again, Irene, you know? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but language is very interesting. And in Canada, the fact that you have both, I don't understand why people don't speak both languages. I honestly don't, you know.
Okay. Well, next question. Can you think of stereotypes, or what kind of stereotypes can be damaging to people?
Yes, and I'm going to refer again to the play that we were in. I don't know if that's legit, but like the stereotype when Pedro was the sleeping Mexican with his sombrero. I think that's a negative stereotype that that's all the Mexicans do. They can be just sleeping, or maybe they've been drinking, but I'm thinking that maybe he's thinking of some mathematical equation when he's sleeping there. Like, it's not necessarily that he's doing nothing. There are some that could be doing nothing, but it does not necessarily mean that that's all there is to that person. So that's an example that comes to mind.
Okay. So talking about Mexicans, what other stereotypes have you heard about Mexicans?
I don't know whether it's more that I've heard, but it's just that I thought that I kind of had an idea of what a Mexican was, or who a Mexican person is. I guess, again, that sleeping Mexican under his sombrero. Poverty, if I'm being completely honest. It's a poor country. There's violence and there are drugs in Mexico, and I'm saying this before my experience with UNAM. I think that those words I would have maybe used to describe Mexico before, and I can still use those words to describe Mexico now, but I know that there's so much more. There is so much more to what a Mexican is. First of all, no Mexican looks alike. There are so many different types of features depending on where you come from, because it's a huge country, So I think that if you don't know a lot about Mexico, you might just think that, maybe you just think that it's only worth visiting if you go to like a tourist resort, because it's not worth going inside or driving inside. I've never done that. I want to do that. So I think a lot of people actually don't know a lot about Mexico, and yet there are people who maybe have gone to Puerto Vallarta or Cancun for years, and they say, we've been to Mexico for years, but that's not Mexico.
They don't really know it. Okay.
Yeah, you don't really know it. And so I think that I have, besides going to Tijuana and visiting Cozumel and Tulum, I have never been to Mexico. And so I don't feel, even though I've learned a lot about what Mexico is and who Mexicans are over the years, I still need to go there to be able to speak with more authority on it, because I don't feel that I have the right to do that. And I know I've learned a lot about Mexico over the years, but still I need to know more, learn more, and I want to learn more.
Good. That's good. And now, in your own opinion, what is the best way, or some of the ways, to break down stereotypes?
I think delving into a subject, like just, and sometimes it might not be a nice topic. It might be emotional, but I think it's absolutely fundamental to be willing to learn more and to break down what a stereotype is. They exist, but it's like the initial stepping stone towards learning about somebody or something or some country. You can't just stop there, because that's very juvenile. That's very it's not enough. So you have to be able to, a bit like that exercise that we did in theater, was to discuss it. And my cat just jumped up, sorry. I think it's necessary to want to know more. I think it's very easy to just let things be, but it's maybe reading, traveling, discussing, opening up your heart, your mind, and it requires effort. I definitely think it requires effort. Otherwise, you'll just talk with people who will not be able to get beyond what they believe a stereotype is. And stereotypes exist, but there's so much other stuff that exists as well.
Okay, good. Now that you were talking about this play, somehow it dealt with cultural identity. Mm-hmm. So what have you learned about cultural identity?
I've learned a lot about Mexican cultural identity, and I am so appreciative of this fact. The fact that I've been in the choir since it began. I think we're now going on 4 years, I'm not sure, and theater. I had no idea that there was such a huge cultural experience in Mexico. I had no idea. And just in terms of books and literature and plays and songs, and there are traditional songs, but there are more modern songs. And true, everyone that I have met is through UNAM. So that's an academic university environment, right? I have not traveled through villages or streets and spoken to people, but my eyes have been opened big time in terms of what Mexico has to offer. So that's why I said that the Mexican sleeping on the side of the street with a sombrero, he could be writing a play. He could be doing so many other things, right? And I've just learned that Mexico has so much to offer. And also in terms of just the Spanish language, when we're talking about Spanish as opposed to all the other languages that are spoken in Mexico, I really like the Mexican Spanish. There is just the way of speaking and the vocabulary and the way of life. I don't know. I feel like I am going on and on. I wrote down answers so I wouldn't go on and on, but I really feel that my heart has been opened up so much more to accept what Mexico has to offer. I honestly do.
Okay, good. And did you learn anything about your own culture during this play?
Yes, that stereotypes exist for every nation, and the fact that we actually made a point of mentioning some of those stereotypes, that brought laughter out of the audience, right? Because there is a stereotype evokes an emotion, and sometimes people think that we shouldn't talk about them because they're kind of funny. They're kind of, it's almost like insulting in a way. But again, I think that's a starting point. You can't say that they don't exist. Stereotypes exist. Even if there's an example of someone, like in some ways, I'm not a stereotypical English Canadian, but but there are some stereotypes about Canada that exist for me. For example, I have a girlfriend, she's from Europe, and we talk all the time. We talk about politics, especially, Trump and China and the coronavirus. We talk about a lot of things. And sometimes I'll say something, and we're very good friends, but sometimes I'll say something and she goes, oh, there you go, the Canadian naivety coming out of you. And I think she says it as almost like an insult, but for me, it's a starting point that, okay, let's discuss why you think that I'm just like a naive person. I don't understand what's going on in the world and whatnot. Because I think it's very easy to just live in your own little world. And I'm very much interested in what goes on elsewhere. And I think that there are Canadians who can't be bothered. They just want to do their own thing, and so they're maybe not as worldly as some other people. I don't know, but I think you can find such a person in any country. I think so, right? Did I learn anything about my own cultural identity? That was the question, right? Yes, I did. I feel like I was exposed to what other people might think is a Canadian stereotype.
Okay.
And that's legitimate. But again, I think it's a starting point. It's always got to be a starting point, because if you just stay there, then you won't progress.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Irene, for this discussion. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like I went on and on, but that's okay.
Don't worry, it's okay. It's okay. And we invite you to watch the play that Irene was referring to. We can find it at UNAM's Canada Facebook page. So thank you all for watching. If you have any comments regarding this topic, please share with us. We would love to read them. And have a nice day.